Hey, everybody, it's Steven here from Craven Something Scary, where it's all horror all the time. And today I have a very special guest joining us, Killjoy Jake. Hey, Jake.
Hi, how you doing?
Man, I'm fantastic. Thank you so much for joining me today to talk about this great film, this classic horror film, Saw. It's going to be awesome.
Oh yeah, I'm very excited. Very excited to get into
Yes,
this.
me too, man. Well, guys, just to talk about Saw a little bit, it stars Lee Winnell, Carrie Ellis, Tobin Bell, Danny Glover, Michael Emerson, and Shawnee Smith, who becomes a much bigger character, as we know, later on in the franchise. And this is written by Lee Winnell, who stars in it, and James Wan. Yes, the James Wan, who also directed the film. So he co-wrote it and directed it. And James Wan, in case you don't know, and if you're here on this channel, I know you know who he is, but he created and co-created rather the Insidious franchise, the Conjuring universe, and the recent horror film Malignant. Which, Jake, I don't know if you've seen it yet. I have not. It's on my list. Have you seen Malignant yet?
Yeah, I did a little review of it. It's very I don't want to get in. I know we're talking about Saw, but James Wan's movies, man, they this felt like Malignant felt like an overture of everything that he's done before in the past, which is so interesting for a horror director to do. It touches on things from Saw, Insidious, Dead Silence, even, which is a very obscure Wan film. But it's very cool. It's very cool. Definitely check it out for sure.
Ooh, nice. Well, yeah, it is on my list to watch, and I will probably do a review of that as well once I finally get to seeing the film. But I definitely like James Wan's style. It's he has his own way of doing things, as we know, and it's always pretty good in my book.
Oh yeah.
Now listen, guys, before we dive in, if you love horror movies, smash that thumbs up on this button right now. And if you've not yet subscribed to the channel, go ahead and hit it. There's not a better time to do it, because this channel is all about these type of videos, collaborations, reviews, updates, reactions, all of the above. So if you like this type of horror content, do subscribe and hit the bell icon so you'll be notified when future content drops on the channel. Also, in the description below, you're going to see a link to Killjoy Jake's channel, and you must go to that channel, or Jigsaw will visit you after this video. So, cheesy Jake, I know you're much better at delivering those type of lines than I am, man. But
oh no, it's great. That was 10
I went for it, dude.
You went for it, man. That's great.
I did. Next time I'm gonna leave that to Jake, because he knows those much better. But really, guys, seriously, after the video's over, do check out Jake's channel. Super, super great content. And we're going to talk about it again more later at the towards the end of the video, a lot more in detail. All right. Well, Jake, I think it's time we get into talking Saw. What do you say?
Yeah, let's do it. I'm all
right.
about it.
If you have not seen the film, this is a spoiler discussion. So I want to let you know that Jake and I are not holding back on any of the secrets of the movie or anything that you might consider to be a spoiler. It will be included. So if you've not watched the film, I do highly recommend you check it out first and then come back here and watch this, and it'll be like more fruitful. But if not, hey, take the ride with us, and we'll tell you what we think, and we'll peel back the onion, and you can go watch it afterwards. So that's fine too.
I will add to that a little bit that this is not like Saw is not like not like a typical slasher film where it's like you can just kind of go into it and have like some of the kills spoiled for you. This is like, it's got a really good twist ending. That's probably one of the strongest things about it. So you don't want this spoiled for you if you haven't seen it yet. I will say that.
100%. Yeah, absolutely. And I'm glad you emphasize that, because it's very, very true. And it's funny because there's one of my brother-in-law's, this is back in when it came out, 2004, and he's not a horror fan, and he was not a horror fan at all. And there were two movies that he, in my lifetime, that I can remember him ever recommending to me ever, that's why when he would mention one, I would pay notice or pay attention to it. The first one he ever recommended to me that I had to see was the movie Seven. And I was like, okay. And I saw it, and I realized why when I saw the film. And I was like, this was wow. And then one day I was at their house, and he said, hey, listen, I got to tell you, there's this movie you need to see, and it's called Saw. I said, yeah, I've heard about it. I've seen the advertisements. He said, no, you need to see the movie. And I saw the movie, and I realized, and again, he was 2 for 2 and on the recommendation. So I bring that up just to say every time I talk about Saul, I have to think about my brother-in-law who is no longer with us, but he's still with me. No, that's okay. He's but I say that because his legacy lives on in my mind with this movie. So I want to throw that out there.
That's fantastic. No, that's wonderful. Seriously.
Awesome. Yeah. Thank you, brother.
Yeah, of course, man.
Hey, Jake, listen, man, let's get in. I know you and I both are chomping at the bit. So let's do this. How about instead of getting into scenes right now, which there's some I'd like to talk about, but we'll save it. Let's talk about just the overall film itself, kind of an umbrella discussion. What are your thoughts as my guest today? You start us out. Overall thoughts on the movie.
I really appreciate how this movie's, it's very, man, it's tough to say because I don't know if I love this one as so much to say it would be my favorite Saw film, because like some of the later ones I do appreciate a little more just because it gets more into like the gore and the kills and stuff. Yeah. And I do like that. But this one, I said earlier, it's the smartest Saw film, I think, for sure. It has the best twist ending. I think it's written the best by far out of any of the other films. Yeah. And there's a genuine like psychological terror in this one that I feel like some of the sequels lose. So that's why I can really appreciate this one. It's not as digestible as some of the sequels where it's kind of just like, it's almost like candy. Like it's just like every 5 minutes there's someone getting ripped apart by some crazy trap. Yeah. And that's wonderful. That's great to watch. You can just put that on and just kind of enjoy it. But this one, it's like a little more deep thinking, and it's almost, it's probably the scariest movie this entire franchise because of that. I think that, like, that's just my opinion. I know some would disagree, but I think psychological terror is the scariest way to just freak out your audience. And this one does it the best out of all the other Saw films. It's maybe an argument that this isn't a horror classic, but I think it is. I mean, it revolutionized the genre almost as much as Scream did 5 or 6 years prior. So I love it. I think it's one of it. Yeah, it's a top 10 horror film for me for sure.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, listen, I'm not gonna be one of those people who disagree with you on that one, because I think you nailed it. Absolutely. And you're right. It really is. The psychological component is such a key factor of this film. And I personally love the psychological suspense, tension building much more than, now you say the other movies are more like, I say popcorn movies, because, hey man, we're going to watch some crazy kills that people have thought of with these traps. I'm not going to put a whole lot. It's not going to require much thought on my part. I just, I'm just going to watch some great stuff. But with this film, it is different. It has a much more psychological component to you, as you said. It's much more suspense building, and that's why you mentioned Scream. And one thing about Wes Craven's film, which we know this channel is kind of dedicated to his memory and his legacy, but he knew how to build terror and suspense psychologically in your mind. He could get you tensed up before a scene, and this movie has that to it. I think it has that same type of feel, where it's not a Scream movie feel, but I mean that tension building feel that we see James Wan really do a great job with the direction and the scenes, the lighting, everything involved. Really, I think brings it together. And also there is a mystery element to this movie, which I think is interesting, and I enjoy the detectives, and we're going to get into scenes. I'm going to jump too far ahead, but there's a detectives trying to solve the case. You got that element. Then you have everything going on with the two primary victims involved and all of their isolation. And then you have the also story of who's behind the camera. You got all this is kind of going, and they shift from one to the next. They keep it moving well. So I thought James Wan is just did a great job for this movie overall. It's writing, directing was well done. And, it was made on a budget, Jake, of only $1.2 million. I mean, think about that. $1.2 million. This movie grossed over right at $104 million in the box office. That's 100 times profit on a film. And I think that just shows you the quality of this movie. And while some may try to say, it's not like horror, I think it definitely is. Because there's some horrific parts of this film, man, aren't there? They jump out at you.
it's little, like the little things too. Like, oh, you almost forget some of the stuff, like the cop who like dedicates his whole life to finding Jigsaw because they killed his partner and all. Like that's really messed up. What do you think about it? Like that's his whole character development is so tragic. It's wonderfully written. I don't know, have you ever seen the short film that they made, that they pitched to the studio when they were trying to make this movie?
No, I have not seen that. No.
It's the entire scene with what's her name, like Angela or whatever, who survives the reverse bear trap.
Oh gosh, yeah, Shawnee Smith. I can't remember our character's name, but I don't know.
It's 11:30 here, so
I know
it's slipping my mind a little bit. But,
we're filming this late at night, guys, so give us cut us some slack here. It's really late.
What's really interesting about the short film they made is it's Lee Winnell in Amanda Young.
Amanda, thank you. Yeah. Yes.
It's Lee Winnell playing her role essentially. And he's like, I woke up in this room, and it's like the same thing. It's like he has the bear trap on his face, and he's playing essentially Amanda's part in like just like a short film version of it. And the puppet comes out and everything. That was their original idea for this movie. They pitched that to the studios, and they're like, oh my God, this is one of the scariest and most inventive ideas we've seen in a while. So like, yeah, we're totally down for it. They flew out from Australia and made this movie. It's awesome. I love the story behind it. I love when you hear stuff like that, like just people like just hitting big on like their first thing essentially. So
for sure. Yeah, man. And it goes back to the quality of their writing and their visionary artistic abilities to do this on such a low budget. And, this is a movie that in 2004, you have a lot of CGI and stuff you could do. No. This movie is practical effects that are really done well. And when they do practical effects well, they are powerful, man. They don't have to be these glossy CGI, gorgeous looking, shots. These gritty, there's something to be said for that grittiness. It's like some of the older horror movies. I'm talking about Halloween, Last House on the Left, even Nightmare on Elm Street, where it's practical effects that are made by hand, operated by hand, but they work, and these are some really great practical effects. And even those effects are still secondary, I think, to the story. Like we talked about it. The story is center stage, in this movie. Yeah.
Cause it's scary, man. Like the dude crawling through the barbed wire and the choppy editing and all that. Like that's scary, man. But the thing that sticks with you is the situational terror of being trapped in that room with your family, who knows what's happening with them. That's the scariest thing about this film, in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. And the idea that you're in a situation that's just this horrible situation, but you're given a way out, but it's gonna cause you to do something that we are wired to never do. It's just it's to mutilate ourselves and harm ourselves, unless we're in a, there's a mental illness involved, of course. But I'm talking about, outside of that, we don't, it's when you don't sit down and easily just cut a limb off or part of a limb off or climb through barbed wire without any clothes on.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? It's like, what do you do? It's either you die here or you die trying here. So it's the worst it's the worst option, or it's the best of two horrible options, right? But it's it goes back to the psychology of it, man, to me, because you always think to yourself, in these horror movies, usually there is no way out. Usually there's a horror movie where they get you're dead, it's over. But no, you can do it, but you got to do this.
Well, you got to cut off your foot.
Yeah, you got to cut your foot off. I mean, okay. I mean, oh boy. So that's very, very disturbing. It's very unsettling.
And one more thing I want to add to that is like going back to how the situational terror is my favorite thing about this horror film. It's the same thing with cutting off your foot. Like, it's gonna suck while you're cutting off your foot, but what sucks the most about it is having to live now without a foot. That's weirdly the scariest thing about it. And you don't think about that because in the moment you're watching a dude cut off his foot, you're like, Jesus Christ!
I know.
Oh my God! You're like, oh, that's gotta suck.
Horrible.
The scariest thing about it is the aftermath of it, which is, I think, what this movie does better than most films. I think it's genius. I love it. There's a lot to learn from this movie, for sure.
Absolutely. And I think James Wan proved in this film, we've seen a lot of really good directors prove it before, and still to this day, that you don't have to have a huge Hollywood budget to make an effective, powerful film. You don't. And this is a great example. And I'll have to say one thing overall also was that another thing was the acting of Lee Winnell and Carrie Ellis. I mean, these guys are carrying the film, I mean, really, and their dialogue between each other. An interesting thing that they said that in the director's commentary is that they did not rehearse those scenes. So the scenes that we see them, he said, now they would do like sometimes like a little quick bantering back walk through, but they didn't like actually rehearse a scene fully ever in the bathroom scenes that they filmed 7 days consecutively in that room. And so they were doing what you were seeing there was them not having to have gone through it 10, 15 times when you're kind of like lost some of the edge. This was the first time, a lot of that emotion you're feeling is in the spot acting for the first time in that setting, which I thought was interesting as well.
Yeah, I don't think I ever knew that. That's awesome. Okay. That adds a whole new level to it, because I think what maybe a couple times going through that movie, like I'd have a criticism of like Lee Winnell's a little, like you can tell he's a younger actor. Like it's not necessarily like bad, like it's not a bad performance. It's actually both him and Carrie Ells. They give great performances, but it definitely feels like he's just has his chops. You know what I mean? He doesn't have like the experience that he does now.
Yep.
But it's still good. It's still well done. It's still like you're just so devastated for both of these characters.
Oh, I know. It's so bad. It's just like, man. And then to see them, I want to use the word devolve almost as the movie progresses, is that as the psychotic and insane atmosphere that's been created by Jigsaw, as it gets worse and time gets shorter and it gets more frantic, and you see that in the characters becoming more desperate. And the level of desperation reaches a peak, finally at the end. And it's just, and you know what? I'm going to say that for scenes. I'm going to say that for scenes.
We're getting excited.
I know. It's like, I want to like talk about some scenes. Right. And then I guess the last thing I have for overall, and then we'll dive in, is that this film really did start a horror subgenre of, I'm not crazy about this term, but it's what I hear is torture porn. And I mean, I don't really care for that name, but
no, it's terrible. It's terrible. It's a horrible name for this genre, it's what it's called.
It's what it is. I mean, I didn't make it up, this is the movie that started it, really. Would you agree? Yeah.
This and like Hostel, which was like I think a year later.
It came a year later. It did.
Yeah, those were the first two that really established that the whole idea of just mutilating someone in a chair. That makes sense. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. And so we have to acknowledge that for Saul. It was the first. So James Wan has that on his resume. Torture porn genre creator. So.
I don't know if I'd want that on my resume or not.
I wouldn't on mine either, brother. I'm personally, no thanks. All right, Jake. Well, listen, I will not hold us back any longer. Let's talk about some favorite scenes. So I will start with you. You have the floor. What's some favorite scenes?
I almost could have seen this entire movie in the bathroom. Like I love all the flashbacks, and the setup outside of it is fantastic too. But I just love the isolation of being trapped in this disgusting bathroom, and you have to do all these crazy tasks to get out. It's terrifying. It is. I love that whole, just everything that takes place in the bathroom between these two characters is so powerful, so impactful. I don't know. That's my favorite part of the whole movie, is like the mystery, trying to solve everything. And then when you do, it's too late. Not to spoil anything, but that I love the, like we were talking about earlier, I love the barbed wire kill. That's probably my, it's just so fucked up to me. Like to die that way would be so upsetting.
It's terrible. Especially because it looked like he was almost to the end of it too. Do you remember?
How would he get out of that? That's my question.
Because when they walk to him, he's almost to the end of the barbed wire, but in front of him is a cyclone fence. So he's through fence. So you're right. Even if he gets to the end, where is he going? I don't know. What is he
I don't see a little hole in the fence anywhere.
No.
I'm always looking for that in the movie, and I'm like, I don't see it. And they set that up early on in the Saw franchise that you can escape his traps. There's always a way out, but most people just don't figure it out. That changes later on in the series, unfortunately. But.
Yes, yeah, I know. Well, there's a scene that I want to bring up and this goes back to that I don't know, psychological component perhaps you were talking about earlier, and it was really good. Is, do you remember there's a part when Dr. Gordon's daughter, he's at home, it's bedtime, she's in her bed and she can't sleep. So she comes out to him like, Daddy, I can't sleep, whatever. She's like, why not, honey? Well, because the man's talking to me again. He's like, honey, there's nobody in their room, thinking she's just, having a nightmare or whatever. So he puts her back into bed and he walks out. And there's this, James Wan nails this shot. Do you remember this shot where she looks at the closet door in her bedroom? It's dark. It's no light in there, right? On the bed, there's one strip of light about like this wide. And and then all of a sudden the eye comes in. Oh, and he's looking out at her. And I was like, oh, that was chilling to me. I thought it was great.
That's done really well. And this is once again, this is a typical scene in a horror film. We've all seen it.
Right.
The little daughter's scared and her mom goes to check it out and there's actually something there. But this is, it's done in such a minimalistic approach. I think it's so scary. It's done so, it's so much with so little. And that's what I love about it. It's just a little, like you said, it's just a little slit of light and you can see an eyeball just staring at you out of the closet. But it's terrifying. You're like, what?
For real.
What is that?
Hey, look,
who's in there?
I'm a grown man. And if I looked at my closet door and I saw that eyeball, I would be terrified. Okay. I mean, let's be honest here. I mean, that's not, now they wouldn't like what I had ready for them, but my point is it would be terrifying to see that.
Right. Oh yeah.
Another shot, Jake, I got to talk about, is when Dr. Gordon, my mom, I believe, he was in his car in the garage, right? And we think initially he's going to work. Remember, he tells his wife, I got to go to the office. They were arguing. And he's like, I got to go to work. And so he leaves. And then you see him getting out of his car. He's in a parking garage, like the hospital garage. And you see him, go inside. And then we later find out, spoiler alert, I've already said that, so I'm going to say it again. I'll quit saying spoiler alert. We later find out that garage is not the hospital. It's that hotel garage. And he was going to see his mistress, remember?
Yeah.
And so he's coming. So this time we see him coming out of that garage and he's getting in his car. And then something happens where he has to get out of the car, right? And then and you see this mirror. There's a mirror up there, like they have hanging on the wall where you can see cars coming. And and instead of James Wan shooting this where you're just on the car, he shoots it from the mirror. POV, you see it from the mirror and you see the back door open slowly. And then and I don't know why this creeped me out. You have to tell me what you think about this. I've seen people get out of cars and scare people, like you say, that's typical horror stuff. But what was different for me was this person gets out and instead of walking, he's crawling. This dude is crawling on the ground. And there's something crazy creepy to me about someone crawling behind you so that your peripheral doesn't see anybody, but they're there. And then you see the red coat or whatever he was wearing, he was wearing, the red jacket, and he's crawling. And then he jumps up, and he's got the pig mask on?
Yeah.
Bro, look, that creeped me out. It still does. Now, what do you think about that scene, man?
It's so scary. And it's once again, just another thing where you took a typical horror movie concept and you twisted it a little bit. You added something else to it that made it even scarier. And once again, something that James Wan does so well is like that minimalist approach. It's nothing too crazy. It's like, if you think about like the idea of just filming that scene, it wouldn't be that hard. But what's genius about it is the mirror shots. Like you see, it's a reflection of something else that you're seeing. So it's like, it's even harder to see what's going on. So you're looking at the screen like this, you're trying to see what is that? Is there's like, you just saw a flash of a red coat or something in the back seat and then the door slowly opens. You're like, what's going on there? It's scary. It's done very well. Based off of just a typical trope that you see in horror movies. And it's great. It's so well done. It's something that I feel like in Insidious, another James Wan film, it's also, he takes I don't know why this is where I'm going with this, but
go for it, man.
Like the whole idea of kids like drawing something scary and showing it to their parents. Basically, that whole movie revolves around that idea with just taking it to a different place where. Yeah. So I love when James Wan does that. He does that very well. I love his minimalist approach to things like psychological concepts like this. Oh yeah. It's really good when you can and unique when you can take an idea that, like you say, may not be something new, but you make it different and it feels new. It feels different, stands out in a good way. And that's,
he has a real ability to do that. And he really does. Any other scenes you'd like to talk about before we get into more kills and things? Any other like scenes that jump out to you that you really enjoyed?
I mean, we're spoiling things, so we can talk about the ending scene, I guess, right?
We can do that. Yeah, we can talk about, sure, go for it.
Because that's my favorite part of the whole movie. I'm sure that's how most people feel about this, but I just, that the first time I saw the dead body in the middle of the floor get up and it's Jigsaw, and you're like, what?
Yeah, no.
That was that blew my mind the first time I saw it. Even just I rewatched it again today, and I just seeing that scene again, it's just like, that is so masterfully written. And the game over slams the door.
Game over. Great. Oh, bro. And I love how they made the sound effect when he closed that door, because it probably just sounded like, a regular door closing with that's metal, but they made it sound ominous when he closed. It was such a, it had a reverb, and it sounded so big. It sounded so final, like when that door closes. It was like, like a tomb being sealed. That's what it felt like. It sounded like.
And then over the credits, you just hear Lee Winnell screaming, and then it just slowly fades out as the credits go on. And it's great. It's done so well.
I'm glad you brought that up, bro, because I didn't think about that right now until you said it, and it's so unsettling on that scene when he's screaming, and like you say, it doesn't go away because the credits go and he's still screaming. And
then, like, it goes for a minute. It's a long audio bite that they have put in there, and it's so just devastating.
It is, Brand, and it works. It really does. It's very haunting when that's the last thing you hear in a movie, and you're on the black screen with credits. It's like, dang. I mean, it wouldn't have been as haunting if the door were just shut, but have him screaming and begging like that, like he knows he's dead. That was, oh man. Well, another scene, and guys, look, we're talking a lot about death scenes, but listen, they did them well. James Wan did these well, and
but you don't see that. You don't see Adam.
You don't.
Like, that's what's. It's scarier that you don't see it happen. In my opinion.
It is scarier. Yeah, because you don't know. All you know is this guy's trapped in this place, and there's no way to him. I mean, he's probably just going to die of starvation and dehydration and just miserable. I mean, slow death, very, very slow death.
Yeah.
Now, I will tell you another scene for me that I thought it's a death scene, but I thought it was a favorite scene, but I hated who it happened to, because, there's two guys that I really was pulling for, which was Detective Singh and Danny Glover's, I can't remember his character's name, but Danny Glover's role, his character. But it was the shotgun booby trap. And man, I'm telling you what, talking about how anticipation builds and how you turn a screw, like with a screw. So just real quick, let me set it up just a little bit. So when he's running down the hall, Detective Singh is running after Jigsaw. They're about to catch him. He came in when they were already in the warehouse. Well, anyway, he's running down the hall and he's trying to get there to him. And man, what happened? You see the camera show a tripwire, and what's coming, and then what happens is James Wan does it where his foot, or like the top of his foot, hits the wire, but then the camera goes into slow motion, and then it starts to pull it like this, and then the camera pans up to 3 or 4 shotguns wired up, pointing down. And what do you see, Jake? You see the tripwire up there on the triggers, on one of the triggers, and it's slowly pulling the trigger. It's like building up what is about to happen. And then sure enough, he realizes that he like looks up, he knows he's hit something, and bang, they all shoot him. But
another thing I really like about that scene, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, man, go ahead.
But another thing I like about that is that's something that could have been done so quickly. You know what I mean? It probably, like, if that really did happen, it was something that would just happen so quick you wouldn't even notice. Like, you just run over the tripwire, shotgun to the face, and then you're dead. Falls over. But he takes his time with it. He really just lets it marinate a lot more than you would have just done that in a typical film. I really appreciate that. You're really just like keeping your audience on edge for every single scare in this movie, and it's genius.
It is genius. And that's right. And it just seeing the slow motion and the trigger pull, it just builds that angst. It builds that tension in you. Like, you just like, oh no, I don't want to see this. And then bam, and it happens. And so, they didn't do a lot of character development with Singh, but he seemed like a nice guy. He was trying to he was looking up to Danny Glover's character. Remember, he asked if he wanted to go out and have a drink. It seemed like he was kind of wanting to, he looked up to him, like he was younger in the force. And so I hated to see him die. And, I come from a family with some law enforcement background. So anytime I see cops get killed, I get, it's an extra part of me is like, oh, dang it. I feel for those guys.
Yeah.
But, it's a movie, but still, I still hate to see it.
Right.
Now, we talked about the reveal of Jigsaw. Dude, that's just, you said it already, unbelievable. Just mind-blowing experience. It really was. And the discipline it took him to stay there for, 8 hours or whatever it was, that entire day, to him to lay there like that. And I'm sure he was medicated to some degree, probably, to help. But to pull that off, man, is dedication.
Do they talk about that in the sequel? Like, I don't know. I feel like there was something mentioned in the sequel where he's like, oh yeah, I had some kind of tranquilizer in my system. I don't know if that's Saw 2 or something, but I feel like that's mentioned at some point, because like, how could you just lay there for 8 hours without twitching or something?
Yeah, exactly. Like, or sneezing or something or whatever, something.
Right.
I think so. I believe he was on some tranquilizers that knocked him out. So he was out, until for so many hours. But that was crazy. And then, the other thing too is the death of Zepp. And when we find out that we think Zepp is Jigsaw. Anyway, he set that up so well. And he's behind the camera, the video, and he's coming in to kill him. Remember, time had passed. It was too late. And so, and the guy was, and what was the other character's name? Not Lee Winnell, but Carrie Ells, his character. His name's escaping me. Sorry, guys.
Dr.
Dr. Gordon.
Dr. Gordon. There
it is. Thank you. Man, it is late, folks. But whenever he was like, "Hey, no, I'm gonna kill him. Like, I'm gonna finally kill, Adam," and he says it's too late. Well, then he shoots him, and Zepp shoots Adam, remember, in the shoulder or whatever, and then he's on the ground, and he's gonna kill Dr. Gordon. And then he reaches up from behind him. And before that, Dr. Gordon is begging for his life. And such a great acting job, because he's like begging Zepp, and he's got his hand shaking, like from, and I'm just thinking how well he pulled off the intensity of acting in that role, how he was completely just begging with all of his life to not be killed. And it was very unnerving. It's so unnerving. And then finally, Adam gets the top of the toilet. Remember that he took off, and he just bashes. And again, off camera, as you said, which I think is very powerful too. You don't have to see it, but he is just badgering Zepp's head, just bashing his head in over. And he's completely unbridled at that point. All that emotion is just coming out. Like, he can't stop himself. He just keeps going and keeps going and keeps going. And finally, Dr. Gordon's like, hey, it's enough. He's dead. He's gone. I just think that all of that is so was so well done and intense and unnerving. That's had to mention.
Oh yeah. No, it's the whole ending. The whole third act is just is genius to me, and the reveal that Zepp was all part of the plan, and that, because you were like, you're dead set on him being Jigsaw the whole time. Like, of course he is, and then it's like, wait a minute, there's even more to this than you thought. Yeah.
And they find out that Zepp was doing it because he was just like them. Like he was because the real Jigsaw had threatened him and his family or whatever. So he was forced into doing it.
He had like the slow acting poison in his bloodstream or whatever.
That's it. To get the remedy. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Well, Jake, we've talked about a lot of deaths, but let's transition now just to talk about what your favorite kill, if there was one from the movie you have to pick, what's it going to be?
I like I said earlier, I love that barbed wire kill for whatever reason. That's like, I don't know why, that's like a top 5 Jigsaw trap for me. And we don't even see that much of it, but it's just like, it's so simple, and it's nothing too crazy, but it's so fucked up. Like, what a way to die,
Horrible.
But yeah, Lee Winnell's death is probably my favorite in this whole series. I think, like, we see him again in Saws 2 and 3, briefly. Like I think he's dead in 3, and they're dragging his body out of there. I'm gonna be honest, it's been a minute since I've seen those sequels. But I love the end of this movie and just how it's so devastating that like he's not even in a trap anymore. He's just fucked. There's no way out at this point. For all the other people in the movie that we've seen go through something horrible, it's like they still have a way out. Amanda makes it out. She's the only one.
She's the only one.
Yeah,
man.
It's devastating to me. It's great. I love it.
For sure. No, and for me, my favorite death was Adam. It was Adam is also at the end when Jigsaw tells him the key to his chain is in the tub. But we saw the very beginning. That's when in the movie it starts off with, you see it going down the drain. You see it floating down into the drain. And so even if he had found it, Jigsaw had sealed that room up. I don't believe he could have gotten out. I just really don't. But now I'm going to pretend like there's no other sequels, and we're just going to go with the first movie based on what we have from knowledge wise. He dies in that room, like I said, we talked about earlier, by himself. It's in isolation and a slow death until he dehydrates to death or starves to death. We do find out later that Amanda, right? That's Shawnee. Yeah. We find out later on that she went into the bathroom and I think and shot him in the head or something later on.
Yeah, it's something like that. And she turns out to be like a Jigsaw apprentice and all that. And
that's right.
Yeah, she's like a main focus in some of those, like I think Saws 2 and 3.
Yes.
Which it's really interesting. It's really well done.
Yeah.
Like the first 3 movies, I love the story of that. After that, it just kind of gets completely off the rails.
That is me too. No, the first 3 I think are great. I think they're really done. They're my favorite. After 3, it gets crazy. Like you said, it goes off the rails into a whole nother level of stuff. I will say this though. I did come back and I thought Jigsaw, the movie Jigsaw, came out several years ago, was pretty good. I enjoyed that one.
Yeah. That one actually fits in the timeline a little more. Like there's some of like especially the 3D one. It's just like it's such a stretch. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like there's like, oh my God, like Jigsaw was killing these people too. Like what? He's been dead for 4 movies at this point. It's crazy.
Got Michael Myers deal going on here or something.
Yeah.
He never dies.
And I like that they made Jigsaw just like it's a prequel, and that's the twist of that movie too. You
don't
realize that it's a prequel the whole time. But yeah, no, it happened before any of the other kills.
Yes, so it would be kind of nice to see Jigsaw Saw 1, 2, and 3. I mean, Saw 2 and 3. After that, that's 4 movies.
I get what you're saying.
Yeah. That'd be.
I would love to see I would love to see more early Jigsaw stuff because I thought that was cool. They touched on that a little bit in Jigsaw and in this movie even a little bit. But the early stuff is so interesting to me and how he became like the killer that he is. But he doesn't kill anybody, right? That's his argument.
That's the whole thing. Yeah, he never actually killed someone with his hands, but his creations though. But it is interesting. So let me ask you this. What would you say is your most favorite aspect of the movie? Just like one thing that you said, that's the most favorite thing about Saw is this.
I like the first movie, especially. Right. I love the psychological aspect of it. That's terrifying to me. And what I think, like comparing this franchise just as a whole to like other horror franchises, there's not too many that do wildly different things throughout their sequels. Like just a criticism of the Halloween franchise, a lot of the movies are just the same thing over and over again. It's Michael Myers just going after people in Haddonfield, and it's like Halloween 4 is basically just a remake of the original film. And it's like it's a good movie. It's not bad, but I like that this franchise and like Friday the 13th, for example, we don't even have Jason with a hockey mask until the 3rd film, which is what everyone knows from those movies. And that's why, in my opinion, that's why there's 12 of those movies. Like it's constantly changing and evolving. It started here and then like, it's just slowly building up and up and up. And that's kind of how I felt about the Saw franchise. Like, like I said, the first movie is probably the smartest. But it's more of a film that's a drama. It leans maybe a little more towards drama than horror, where the sequels just go full blown horror. And you get that change, that taste of something new with every movie, and that's why that's how you keep a series alive like that. And that's what I love this franchise. I love horror franchises that do that. That's why there's so many Saw movies, because they just kept doing something different with every movie for a while until it kind of plateaued a little bit, but it's cool. I love it. I love interesting horror franchises like that. And a lot of people don't go back to the first movie. They see the sequels and they love seeing the traps and all that. But that's not how it started off. That's not how like same with Friday the 13th. It didn't start off with Jason running around Camp Crystal Lake killing people. It was his mom.
That's right. He wasn't even there. Yeah. I mean, he wasn't as far as like killing. Yeah. It was not even a part of that movie. But everyone thinks it's just Jason. And let me say something this. Anytime I'm in a discussion with anybody about a movie and Friday the 13th comes up in the conversation, I have to say, I love Halloween. I love Friday the 13th, or is it Jason X? Jason X. Yeah. Jason in Space. Okay, guys, that's Jason 10 is the 10th one, I think. But that one right there, I don't care what anybody says about that movie. I love that movie. It is fun and it's a little crazy, but I think it was much better than I was anticipating. When you hear Jason in Space, you think, this is really, but honestly, I thought it was a good movie. So I'm going to give love to Jason 10 every time I get a chance in the conversation. So
once again, though, another reason why I feel like that franchise, that's why that franchise is still alive. You can poop on that movie all you want, but it's you go back to it and you're like, this is actually a really fun B movie, It's got a lot of really cool self-referential stuff too. It kind of makes fun of itself a little when Jason's walking around the fake Camp Crystal Lake in the spaceship, and the girls are like, "Let's have premarital sex." Yeah. It's great. I love that. It's this series always found a way, especially the Friday franchise, always found a way to reinvent itself with every sequel.
It did, and to your point, it's you go into it knowing kind of what you're going to get as far as your expectations, but you also have surprises. So it's fun. I call those kind of fun movies,
Yeah, and same with the Saw franchise too. Like the Saw movies did different stuff every time. Like I was talking about earlier, how the traps become inescapable. Like in 5, that was kind of the first time we see that, and then 6 gets a little political. It's weird. They do totally different things with every sequel. They don't just do the same thing every time, even though. Yeah, I mean, they kind of do it. 4 through 3D, it's it's kind of the same movie every single time. But it does introduce different things, which is cool. And most horror franchises wouldn't think to do that. That's why I think Saw is always just going to be around. We had Spiral come out this year. Yep. Saw 10 has already been announced to be happening.
Okay, all right.
That's exciting. I'm always going to follow this franchise wherever it goes, even if it kind of gets a little stale sometimes. Yep. I'm always excited to see what it does next. So
give it, I would say give it the benefit of the doubt. You prepare for the worst, but you hope for the best, and give it a shot, and you never know. Sometimes you're surprised in a good way. So we'll take it.
Oh yeah.
My favorite aspect overall was just that I thought it was a fantastic blend of horror, mystery, and creativity. And I just thought overall my favorite aspect was I guess you call it the script, the story, the story itself that was written by James Wan and James Whannell. And I always love it when you see a movie the director is also a writer of the film, because you don't have to wonder when they were writing this, did they think this, or I interpret it this way? No, he's interpreting what we see on camera as what he did when he wrote it. That's what I think is great. So when I see director and writer, I'm a big fan. I'm a big fan of that. Now, it doesn't mean that if it's different, it doesn't work. I'm just saying it's an extra me. It's like an extra touch to see.
Oh no, I agree, because I feel like sometimes when you have multiple people either writing a movie or multiple people directing, it's some ideas get skewed, or people want to throw this in there where the original idea was supposed to be this.
Yep.
Lee Whannell and James Wan, they think on the same level, I think. With even now they're kind of making separate movies. Whannell wasn't involved with *Malignant*, James Wan wasn't involved with *The Invisible Man*. They're kind of doing their own separate thing, and they're definitely taking their own stuff. They're doing different things with their movies, but it's still very similar. Just taking old concepts and twisting them in new ways. *The Invisible Man* is quite literally the definition of that. You took a 50s horror film and you spun it, you had this Black Mirror technology aspect to it, which is what? Who would even think to do that? It's awesome. I love *The Invisible Man*, one of my favorite Lee Whannell directed films. And then *Malignant*, kind of the same thing. It's almost the idea of Basket Case. You haven't seen it yet. I don't want to.
No, not yet.
Spoil it.
Not yet. But
I almost spoiled it. Oh man, I'm so glad I saved myself because I don't want to spoil. There's a big twist, and oh shit, I'm just gonna shut up now. So
gotcha.
Yeah.
Jake,
that's all I'm gonna say.
No worries, man. No worries. Yeah. All right, and I want to ask you this also here as we kind of start to wrap up our discussion. If you could change any part of the movie, if there's anything you would do differently, if you were in that writer director's seat, what would it be? If there is anything.
Man, that's a good question. That's a really good question. Like I said, this is like maybe a top 10 horror film for me, and it's maybe my favorite Saw film. But that answer changes a lot with this franchise because, like I said, like this series does a lot of different stuff. I do like how in the sequels it gets a little bloodier. I will say, like, if I could add something more to this, it would be adding maybe some more traps, maybe seeing some more of Jigsaw's background, even though I feel like less is more, and this movie does that really well. It would have been cool to see maybe just like some more gore on top of all of the other psychological, because it's very like, I feel like with a lot of horror movies, especially like this, you have like a meter for either how psychologically terrifying it's going to be versus how visually, like how much gore is going to be in this, how visually terrifying it's going to be. And there's definitely less of that and much more of the psychological stuff, which I love. That's kind of like one of my favorite mix and my favorite recipe for a horror film. Definitely looks like that. But if you can throw in some more blood and gore, I'm not going to say no to that. That's always a positive in my book. So
sure, yeah. No, that's good, man. For me, I would change, and this is something I rarely ever say about a movie, but I would actually, I would increase the runtime by about 15 to 20 minutes, only because I would like to fill in the backstory with these characters more. There's a little bit of character development backstory with Dr. Gordon, with his wife and daughter. So we get a little bit into him, but I would like to see that same level and more with Zep. We see him, and as a janitor, working in the hospital a little bit here and there. But we don't really get to see him in his environment and his home. And there's no development there with him either. And same with Adam. We only know he's a photographer and a PI or whatever. So I rarely ever say I want a movie longer. I usually say shorter because I like pace to be really, really tight. But I would have added another 15 to 20 minutes. Let us understand these characters a little bit more, care about them even more.
And then you feel even more devastated.
You do. It increases that feeling of devastation when you care about the character more. And I'm going to go way off of target here for just a second, but the reason it makes me think of the recent movie. I'm not going to spoil anything. I have a review of it, guys, here on this channel, but I watched the Netflix slasher There's Someone Inside Your House recently, and I got a review of it here, non-spoiler. But one of my complaints about the movie was that these side characters outside of the lead character, there was zero development of these people. I don't have any real attachment to them. So when the people who die in the film, that die in the film, I really don't care about them. I mean, I'm sad to see friends of the lead character die, but I mean, honestly, I'm like, there's no feeling in me other than, oh, that's too bad. But I want to see how they're killed. I'm more excited about how they're killed than about them dying. Right? You know what I mean?
Yeah. And no, I agree. Yeah.
So anyway, but back to Saw, that's what I would do because it increases the horror when you care about someone dying.
Yeah, Zep especially was not developed as much. That's actually a really good point. I didn't think about that. He, like, you see him in that one shot where John's in the hospital and he's like, they're talking about he has an inoperable brain tumor and all that.
Yes.
But why did Jigsaw pick him? That's another question that I feel like doesn't get answered. It's like he's unconscious there, and that's the one time Zep kind of poked his head in to say something. He clearly he says something though, like it's like, oh, it's John. He's a brilliant man. They know each other, but this film doesn't really explain that. I feel like I think the sequels do talk about that a little more, but not in this film. So it's kind of left a mystery to us. Would have been cool to see maybe like another 15 minutes just when, like at the end of the film, somewhere in between like Jigsaw waking up and trapping Adam in there. Maybe just a little scene with him and Zep together. Some kind of conversation ensue between them. That would be, no, I agree. and a little more on Adam's background as well. We get a few like personal lines with him, which I think makes us care about him. Like he says something about like, oh, my girlfriend dumped me, and he's had like a crazy girlfriend or something that said I was too angry, which is like, you learn a little more about him and you start to like really like his character, and then you're even more devastated for him at the end. But a little more of that. Yeah, I agree. I think this movie could use that to make you fall in love with these characters just a little more.
Just a little bit more. Yeah. And I did care about, to your point, Adam and Gordon, Dr. Gordon. I did. I felt for them. I didn't want them to die when he's screaming, and I feel that pain. So I'm good with them as well. I just wish those other guys would have got some more fleshing out for us, you know?
Yeah.
But again, all in all, if that's really the only thing I would change. Other than that, I think if that's all there is to change, that's pretty good, I think, in my book for a movie, if that's all we're talking about. So all right, man. So final thoughts before we wrap up, man. Your final thought on the movie. What would you tell someone, let's say, who's never seen the film? What would you say to them right now?
I would say, like, if you're genuinely looking for something that's going to scare you on a deep psychological level, like, check out this film. And I feel like I would also say, like, to someone who's looking to get into like we were talking about earlier, torture porn, I would say this is not the movie for you. Surprisingly, you would think it would be, but check out the Saw sequels if you're a little more into that. This one, this almost feels like a A24 movie. If you've ever seen any of those, like Hereditary, The Witch, The Lighthouse, Ex Machina, like it feels more like that than it does like some of the sequels do, where they're just focused more on crazy kills and just elaborate. The traps get even more elaborate as the sequels go on. Yep. This is much more it's a deep thinking movie. It's very smart. It's very psychological. It scares you there instead of just trying to show you all these like visceral fucked up kills. I love it. It's something you don't expect at all returning to this movie, knowing how the franchise is now and what it's known for. This is not that, which is I think kind of genius actually. So.
Absolutely. I agree with you 100%. And my final thoughts is that it's a fresh, a unique idea with excellent writing, excellent acting, excellent directing. And it just, again, shows, like I said earlier, that you don't need a massive budget to make an effective horror film. You don't need to, you can do it if your writing, your direction, and your acting is strong enough. And I feel that all of those points were check marks. They hit all of it. And it created a subgenre of horror. So that says something for how well this movie was done as well. So well done on Saw. It's a great film. Highly recommend it. You guys need to see it. And listen, if you've already seen it, when you're watching this, you probably have. Go watch it again if it's been a while. Because Jake and I both got back into it after a long time of seeing the original, and it was refreshing to see it again. It was just enjoyable now as it was the first time. So yeah, that's our thoughts on Saw for you guys. Now, Jake, let's talk now about something that I've seen recently as well, and that is your channel, guys. Killjoy Jake's channel on YouTube is growing. It's blowing up. He's having great success. He's a great guy. And when you see his videos, you're going to understand why he's growing and why he's being so successful. And his channel Jake does a great job of keeping you informed and up to date on all of the horror films that are coming out, horror news. You know what? Let me stop talking about it. Jake, you're the man. You are right here as my guest today. So why don't you tell folks who've never been to your channel, what can they expect?
I try to talk about, like you said, I try to talk about all the upcoming horror films that are coming out, try to keep you up to date with a lot of the crazy stuff that's going on. There's obviously just so much going on in horror. I'm trying to cover like what I can. Sometimes sometimes it's like, oh my God, there's so much going on. That's so exciting. I want to talk about all of it. I try to throw out everything, not just about the big movies. Like my last video, for example, I talked about like Last Night in Soho, Edgar Wright's new movie. I talked about Antlers, the new Paranormal Activity. I try to talk about like some of the other films on top of like the big ones like Halloween Kills and Scream, which I also talk about. I'm very excited for those as well, but I like to shed light on some of the smaller films also. VHS 94, which I've been talking about recently. It's my favorite. It's probably my favorite horror film of the entire year. It blew my mind. That's another one that I want to I just love shedding light on these other horror films that not so many people are talking about. That's been a big goal of mine all year, to try to talk about these little ones. So it's been really fun doing it. Come check it out if you're all about that. If you want to know more about the horror scene nowadays, that's what I'm trying to promote and put out there, and just have a good time. Just be silly, have fun, talk about horror films. That's all I'm trying. That's what I'm trying to do. Trying to have fun over here and make some friends.
Absolutely. Yeah. And you do a great job. And watching your videos are a ton of fun and very engaging. So guys, listen, when this video is over here in just a minute, please look in the description below right now. You see it right there. Click that link when we're wrapped up. Go straight over to the channel, subscribe to his channel, and watch his videos. Give all his videos a thumbs up, because he works hard and he puts out great content, and it's worth your time. I think you're going to be really happy if you haven't yet discovered Killjoy Jake's videos. So enjoy those. Well, Jake, I have enjoyed, speaking of which, our talk today and on Saw. This has been a great time. I hope you've had a good time as well.
Oh, I had a great time. Thank you for everything. The shout out and the discussion. It was awesome. Yeah, that's great.
You bet, man. Truly my pleasure. And we got more to come, right, Jake? So Jake and I we were already cooking up an idea for you guys in the near future. So we'll be back together again before you know it. But until then, guys, this is Steven with Craven Something Scary, where again, it's all horror all the time with my special guest today, Killjoy Jake. We hope you enjoyed it, and we'll catch you next time. See ya.
Peace.